Wrestlebread podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 88 of the Wrestlebread podcast. So we got TLC coming up this weekend, which I completely forgot, and apparently a lot of people forgot, possibly even including WWE. They did set up some matches nicely. Some matches wasn't really that much up to par. We also had a bit of breaking news. I think it was today, but I saw it today, that AEW Dynamite actually beat Raw in the ratings. Congratulations to them. I know that a lot of people are going to say that it happened because Raw went up against Monday Night Football. It was a really good matchup that happened on Monday. But nevertheless, it's very, AEW should be proud of themselves that for, this, they only been in a year, a little over a year, and they already got high enough numbers to beat Raw. No, they're not going to do numbers like Attitude Era. No, they're not going to do like prime, regular numbers that Raw can do if they didn't have Monday Night Football or even Smackdown. But nevertheless, the fact that they have made that hit that goal of being able to go up against Raw, which I, for one, didn't think that they would be able to do it. I didn't think that they would be able to pull numbers. So they're definitely doing something right over there. Definitely working on something. Of course, it has to do with the fact that we got Sting there, and the fact that Sting is not so much that Sting isn't coming in and immediately saying, "I'm going after Cody. I'm going after the title." Like there's a bit of a slow, it's somewhat of a slow burn to it. Like he's not saying that he wants to go after Darby. He's not saying that he wants to team up with Darby or even coach him or something like that. But there's, it's a bit of a mystery there. It was a good promo that he shared with Cody Rhodes. The fact that Cody immediately, as the vice president, the face of the company, to immediately say, "Hey, I want to go up against you," and for Sting to sit there and say, no, I'm not here for you. I'm here for something else. So I think that was cool. The fact that it leaves a bit of a mystery for the next week. Even with that ending that they had with MJF and Orange Cassidy, that they still were able to do pretty good numbers. I mean, I definitely commend them for that. So going into a bit of news. So according to the Wrestling Observer, Vince McMahon likes Riddle, and he thinks he's very funny, quote unquote, in his own weird way. And so Vince may not see him as a main eventer, but he does see him deserving regular time, which makes sense, because the personality that he is showing definitely coincides with the type of comedy that Vince McMahon loves. The fact that, Riddle, it talks and acts like he just stepped out of a 90s surfer film, with the bro nuts and acting like very, I don't know what the right word to use, but not like aware of what's going on. So, kind of the stereotype that the surfer guys had back in the old school movies. So I'm not surprised that, he's getting more airtime, but he's not a main eventer. Another piece of news, too, is that Stone Cold has talked about Pat McAfee's promo skills. He was promoting his season of, I think it's the Broken Skull. No, not Broken Skull. I forgot which show there's a show that he has, I believe it's on USA, that he is promoting. And they asked him about Pat McAfee, and he said, quote, "He puts it all on the line. He's going for it. Basically, I think his verbal skills, he's slaying everybody. but he's not afraid to go out there and put it all on the line. So you wouldn't expect that from a guy that kicks the football, but no, Pat McAfee's badass. I think he's doing a really, really good job. I give him a solid A. And for everyone in NXT should definitely feel some type of way because you have someone who is coming out from the football world, who's a punter, first of all. Not really, the punter isn't always the popular person on the team, unless it's like 3 seconds left and you have to kick the game-winning field goal. But, you know, punters aren't really the most popular people on the team. A lot of times, Mr. Irrelevant turns out to be a punter. I remember one year it was a punter. But for Pat McAfee to come out and cut the promos that he's been doing, like, I commend him for it, definitely. But the fact that he is pretty much the best on NXT cutting promos and he's not a WWE wrestler, he doesn't go to the promo classes that they be having in NXT either. Everyone should definitely feel ashamed of themselves and definitely look in the mirror as to what they can do to do better. And the fact that not only is he like better as far as cutting promos, but he is doing his job. He's triggering, a lot of the fans. He's doing his job as a heel, and he's very good at, being such a damn troll, a bit of a rich asshole type of troll. He's not even like a stereotype that WWE likes to do. So definitely is doing a very good job. Oh, so a little bit of an update, my tech update. So I'm on the Hub's laptop and I had my mic connected and I was like, all right, cool. At least I won't sound like I'm talking in the middle of an empty room when I do my next podcast. And 10 minutes before I hit, broadcast, the computer gives me the blue screen of death and goes out. So now I'm like trying to reboot it, and I guess it's just like not in the cards for me to to get my technical issues together. I still kind of plan to broadcast live. It feels a lot easier for me to just kind of like broadcast and kind of like talking versus talking and editing, because then I turn into a bit of perfectionist and I start editing a lot of things out, stuff like that, and it takes me longer to put out an episode versus and talking live and kind of like just put out the episode that way. So, but I at least wanted to be able to use my mic, and the fact that the laptop isn't working for me to even plug in my mic is a bit of a pain in the ass. But getting back to the news, yeah, the fact that Pat McAfee promos is like one of the best things in NXT right now should definitely be. It should be a sad day for anyone who works in NXT that someone like I said who's not a wrestler is able to cut such a great promo. So going on to AEW news, a bit of surprising fact, according to Wrestling Observer, a big part of Sting coming to AEW was the fact that Tony Khan agreed that Sting can leave on his own terms. Very risky move, as far as a business move for Tony Khan, but I guess it would make sense. Better incentive for Sting to be able to not feel like he's locked in with the company, or even if he decides, I feel like it's better of a bargaining piece for Sting, but it's also kind of displays the type of relationship, the type of trust that AEW would have for Sting, that the fact that they say, yeah, you can leave on your own terms, kind of gives you a bit more trust that, they're trusting that, you know what you're doing. They know that you're not going to just screw them over or something like that. But I guess once, Sting feels as though that he can't anymore, that, he would probably go to Tony Khan and, go over terms or talk about how they could better use him. But a lot of people are still very excited the fact that Sting is in AEW. Versus on the other side, now we are getting Goldberg, who keeps, bringing up the fact that he wants Roman Reigns. And as as much as I don't want it, I think what is happening is we're leading to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, instead of The Rock. And I know that sounds a bit of contradictive, a part of from me, the fact that I rather have The Rock versus Roman Reigns versus Goldberg versus Roman Reigns. The Rock, it makes sense storyline wise, because he is part of that family, and for Roman Reigns to say he's the head of the table, this, that, and the third, it leads to, well, there's someone that's in his family who's the biggest head of the table than Roman Reigns, who could definitely speak on, feeding the family and stuff like that. So for The Rock to come in, yes, as the part timer and wrestle, yes, at WrestleMania, it makes a lot more sense for that to happen, versus Goldberg to just come back and be like, hey, I'm back here to get my title so that my son can see me walk around with the title and, take pictures with me and stuff like that. And I feel, I don't know. But the thing is, it's kind of hard to tell if The Rock would be willing to put his cousin over. I'm like leaning more towards, yes, I see that happening, but I don't really see Goldberg putting Roman Reigns over. Because that, I mean, I don't know. I don't see it happening. I don't see Roman Reigns. I mean, I don't see Goldberg putting over Roman Reigns, because it feels like that's just not who he is. I mean, we're talking about the guy who went on a streak of 175 wins, and he was defeated, yes. But as far as when it comes to the title, because Roman Reigns has the title, and I don't really see him losing that title anytime before WrestleMania. It seems like that's what we're leading to. And it's going to be a shame, because it's going to destroy this, the gimmick that Roman Reigns is, the tribal chief. I mean, you can't really call yourself the tribal chief, head of the table, if somebody, 50 something year old man comes in, kick your ass, and pretty much do a squash match and take your title from you. Another piece of news, multiple websites are saying that there is a tease on Impact that they are very well leading to Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann program in 2021. And like I said before, when it was mentioned that Impact and AEW are going to be working together, it benefits Impact, really. It's going to get a lot more eyes on Impact. It's going to be kind of weird. I mean, AEW Dark, I believe, comes on before Impact. I think there may be a slight carryover. I might be wrong. I think AEW Dark comes on at 7 and Dynamite comes on at 8. And I don't think there's any really carryover, if I'm not mistaken. I think sometimes there's a bit of an overlap between the two shows. But I think it's definitely good for Impact, especially what's going on, what has happened in their history. Them not really selling out in arenas, and the how many people show up to their shows, and pretty much giving away tickets so that people will come and check them out. Uh, I think this is something very good. I think this is a bit of a turning point for Impact. Because Impact sometimes, like I said, I try to watch Impact sometimes. There was that episode that they had where they did that Russell House, which really didn't really lead to much as far as the story. Well, it did kind of lead to something storyline wise. Rosemary went and got married, but then her fiance was murdered at the wedding. Um, but it didn't really do much for everyone else that was in the house. What did it do for Kylie Ray? I guess for as far as Susie, it kind of put her more on the mat map. But for everyone else, it really didn't do too much for them. And then for it to be, randomly, the way it ended, it kind of like I don't know, it didn't really make the story that much exciting. But I like Rich Swann, especially when he went to Impact. I think him versus Kenny Omega would be a good matchup. So if it leads to them going against each other, a bit of somewhat of a long-term feud in 2021, I'm all for it. Because Kenny Omega has already mentioned that he is looking to collect weapons. So for him to go and collect AEW Impact's title, of course, that would involve Rich Swann in some type of way. Also, last week it was announced that a week or two ago, it was announced that AEW will be doing New Year's Bash, I think it was called, and it's going to be in 2 nights, with the second night on January 6th, and it was reported that Snoop Dogg was going to be appearing there on January 6th, and it was the joke of how long will it take for WWE to change Sasha Banks' theme music back to the old one, because Snoop Dogg is going to be appearing on AEW. But not only is he going to appear at AEW, but he will actually provide commentary during his appearance. He's going to be commentating some of the shows, which I think is the smartest thing to do, especially after the Tyson fight, where Snoop Dogg went viral and a lot of people were calling for him to be a commentator for a lot of different things. So for AEW to go ahead and get him locked in at their commentator table definitely helps. Plus, on top of that, AEW Dynamite is a little more, they allow a little bit more cursing than WWE would. So I don't think that it would really fit for him to show up for WWE and do commentary there, because, Snoop Dogg likes to curse. He likes to react naturally. And so I'm sure that he would be fine with, commentating and reacting and things like that. So, can't wait to see that. January 6th is going to be very interesting. So, don't know if, I don't know how I'm going to watch. I don't know how I'm going to watch both shows. Normally, I try to watch both shows at the same time. And whatever match I see that I would grab my attention more, that's what I pay attention to. Or if I see a promo that will interest me more, that's what I kind of pay attention to. So, I don't know how January 6th is going to go, but it's so far away that it don't even matter right now. So, going into recaps, I'm going to start with Smackdown, then Raw, and then I'm going to get into the TLC predictions. Smackdown was very interesting. We had the SmackDown Women's Championship, Carmella versus Sasha Banks, and I was a little surprised that they had this match. I figured that they was going to have this for TLC, to make this kind of like a throwaway match for Sasha Banks, because she kind of needs an opponent for TLC. This was... It wasn't really that good. Carmella, God bless her, she has gotten better in the ring, but she's still not really up to par to really be taken seriously. I mean, she had her moment back when she won the title, and then she kind of went up against Charlotte, and her inexperience in the ring definitely showed, and it showed again at SmackDown with her going against Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks is really good in the ring. She really sells, and a lot of her matches, a lot of her feuds definitely is like top tier, match of the year type of candidates. So with her going in there with Carmella going in there with Sasha Banks, probably, I mean, it helped her. It definitely, helped her to get an experience, a veteran to kind of help her out, but it didn't really work out for me. It really wasn't the best. And I don't know, I really don't expect, of course, I don't expect Carmella to win a championship, but I was hoping that I would be more entertained by Carmella in this matchup. I don't really get her gimmick still yet. I don't know if she's like um I don't know if she's trying to be like a Kardashian or like, I don't know. I don't really know what her gimmick really is. Um how it translate in the ring too, but I guess, I'll give it time and see how it goes. Also, we got more, of course, more of the tribal chief, Kevin Owens cutting a promo in the ring at Roman Reigns. And shout out to the tribal chief who actually stood in front of the TV correctly, standing directly in front of the TV to watch Kevin Owens cut the promo versus standing at a 37-degree angle that a lot of people love to watch the, matches and promos backstage. Uh, Jey Uso asking Roman Reigns if he can go out and attack Kevin Owens. Roman Reigns says yes. It took forever for Jey Uso to get out there. I don't know if he lost his way, if he took the wrong turn, if he needed to, get the chair custom made from China or something, but it took him a hot minute from when Roman Reigns told him okay to get to the ring. Kevin Owens, it was a good promo. It was a bit wordy for me. With him, it's like, oh, this is a chair. This is this is a table. This is hard, and this, that, and the third. And there were good points of Kevin Owens promo, but it felt a bit too wordy. It felt like the essay that you had to turn in. You were at 400 words and it has to be 500 words, so you start adding things in that is really unnecessary. That's what that promo felt like. Jey Uso finally gets to the ring, attacks Kevin Owens behind with the chair, but of course, Kevin Owens was able to get some offense back in, start taking out Jey Uso, and then you see Roman Reigns walks away, and Roman Reigns shows up in record time. So I'm guessing that Jey Uso took the wrong turn. So Roman Reigns comes out and he starts to go for the ring. And Paul Heyman, who I completely forgot what he sounded like, decided to suddenly become the advocate. He became the Paul Heyman that we all know and starts telling Roman Reigns, like, no, don't go to the ring. You're the Universal Champion. You do things on your time. He's telling you what to do, and you're responding. You're the tribal chief. Like, don't go to the ring. Don't listen to him. You're about to do what he wants you to do. And so Roman Reigns, changed his mind because he was given Paul Heyman the title, and he was like, I'll take the title, but you're basically listening to what he's doing. And I'm like, there he is. There is Paul Heyman. And this makes a little more sense, especially if they're playing the game that Paul Heyman is kind of the little voice in his head that is turning Roman Reigns into this tribal chief. Because you have to think of, where did this attitude come from? Roman Reigns didn't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to, turn into the tribal chief. Like, there has to been, a bit of an influence behind it. So for it to be Paul Heyman, it makes sense for Paul Heyman to now start to show, like, yes, he is a bit of an influence to why Roman Reigns is acting the way he's acting. We had Sami Zayn versus Big E. Big E got a new shirt, and so I don't. There's another interesting thing with Big E. I don't know if anyone saw it on Talking Smack. Paul Heyman dropped some facts to Big E, and I loved it. I wish they would show it. Hopefully they show it on Smackdown and kind of make a bigger deal about it. Because for Big E to seriously be taken seriously, especially for a singles run, he can't be as silly as he always is. Like, he can be silly, but once he's in the ring, like, take the silliness out. You know what I mean? Especially since we have Roman Reigns who's holding the title. But I guess they're going to have him go after the IC title first before then. But for him to have like the serious, in my opinion, for him to have a serious feud, he definitely got to, he can do the funny promos, but he has to be able to, kind of get it together once in the ring. But Paul Heyman sitting there dropping facts to Big E and was like, "Look, you can't be silly and be taken seriously all the time." And he was like, "I know you love I'm kind of paraphrasing what he did, but basically he said, if you love the New Day, you gotta leave the New Day behind." And he said Roman Reigns has been wrestling on his own, or he's been back for so long. He was like, whenever he is in the ring, no one mentions the Shield. And I said, that is so damn true. I mean, I mentioned the Shield when it comes to his music and stuff, or his like gear, but people aren't bringing up him in the Shield. When Seth Rollins, same thing with Seth Rollins. When Seth Rollins is when Seth Rollins is in the ring, we don't talk about the Shield either. So, it was definitely good truth that was dropped. We also had Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura versus Otis and Chad Gable. Chad Gable, he's training Otis in his Alpha Academy, and he had like very unorthodox ways to kind of train Otis. Otis was winning the match, but then Gable asked to be tagged in, only to end up losing the match, and he got pinned. And Gable claimed that he was just testing Otis when they were backstage, and he didn't really want to be tagged in, but he wanted to see if Otis would tag him in. And because Otis tagged him in, that's why they lost the match. So, bit of a reverse psychology, I guess, going on there. But I don't know where this is going. But I'm going to sit back and see what happened, because I am happy that we are no longer getting the Shorty G, and that we're kind of getting to, some type of we're kind of getting to some type of American Alpha here as well. Well, another thing that I forgot to mention with the Carmella and Sasha Banks match, at the end there, we had Carmella, who broke a champagne bottle on Sasha Banks' back. But I think from the camera angle, and I have to like rewatch it again, it looked like from the camera angle that it actually hit the announce desk. Oh no, it actually hit her back. I just watched a bit of a replay. It actually hit her back. And then Sasha Banks took out the guy who was serving the drinks to Carmella. But like I said, I'll wait and see what happens with this feud. Coming up next, this Friday, actually, we're going to get Bianca Belair versus Bayley. And we're getting, for the Tag Team Championship, the Street Profits versus Ziggler and Bobby Roode. Yeah, and another thing, too, Carmella's entrance was very unique, but the music choice, I don't know what the hell that was. It sounded like going into a rave on drugs. It was the music choice was very fucking weird. I'm hoping that maybe it's a placeholder for whenever they decide what music they're actually going to use. But it was very fucking weird, I have to say that. Let's see. So going into Raw, very interesting kind of setup. It mainly centered around Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. Um, Randy Orton was backstage. Bray Wyatt comes out to cut a promo, and he mentioned how, how him and Randy Orton had a lot of fun. But of course, what we knew that happened at the end there, um, the Fiend comes out, and so Randy Orton told him, you know, he realized that, it's all about games and stuff like that. And he told Bray Wyatt that they wanted to play a game of hide and seek. And Randy Orton was backstage somewhere. And Bray Wyatt decides to run and go back there and look for Randy Orton. He runs into Riddle backstage, who, of course, goes into the bro nouns instead of the bro nuts this time. He wanted the pronouns to be featured on the Firefly Funhouse, and even Wyatt was like, "Okay, get the fuck out of my face." And then and then Riddle went and got an autograph from the Rambling Rabbit. Um, and then R-Truth was talking to Huskus. Huskus wasn't saying anything, but it was pretty fun. That was a bit of a funny segment. Wyatt comes up and tells Huskus not to talk to strangers, and then Bray Wyatt goes into a room that was dark except for the empty rocking chair that was very classic Wyatt family Bray Wyatt. He sat there and he kind of was like, not really, like, he was very distracted because he didn't know really how to feel, because he was in that, he is the Firefly Funhouse Bray Wyatt, who has the Fiend kind of flowing through his veins. But on top of that, he's sitting on the chair that is reflective of his past. So he was very conflicted of how to feel, especially when he sat down. And you see Randy Orton comes out, starts attacking Bray Wyatt. They start fighting, and then Randy Orton locks him into some type of box. And then he goes over, gets a can of gasoline, and then sets it on fire. And I'm like, okay, Undertaker 3.0, let's do it. Um, and so Randy Orton was sitting there smiling, and then I realized, like, we are watching an attempted murder. I think someone should call the cops and get them on the scene. But, this is WWE. Cops only come out whenever Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, or Stephanie McMahon say so. So the next thing we know, the box lid pops open and the Fiend pops out with the box on fire and everything. And Randy Orton looked like surprised as all hell. And I thought that was pretty good. It would have been interesting if they had kind of, I don't know. It would have been like not really dragged out, like dragged out more. Um kind of see, to kind of see like Randy Orton kind of lurking around or something like that, or Bray Wyatt lurking around even more. But it was a very entertaining segment, and it gives definitely gives a lot more, you know, it gives you a lot more excitement for this matchup between them two. We also had the Hurt Business versus the New Day and Jeff Hardy. I'm a bit surprised. I mean, the Hurt Business is definitely trying to work their way into getting that tag team championship. Definitely wanted to show their dominance before the TLC championship. And I'll get into who I think might win that. We also had, of course, Lana versus Nia Jax. Interesting to see how that would turn out. I had the slight feeling that Nia Jax will win not Nia Jax, Lana would win on some type of fluke. She had the help of Asuka, cheering her on and telling her to believe in herself. And I don't know, like this whole underdog story with Lana, it doesn't feel authentic, especially with the whole Survivor Series thing and her I don't know, she's gotten a little better. Like, Lana definitely has gotten better in the ring, similar to Carmella, but it's just still something off. Truthfully, Lana's first match in WWE was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It was in 2016, and she still kind of wrestles like she's still fairly new. Um, like, your husband is Rusev. Your husband's a wrestler. You could definitely get a lot more training. Um, I know she couldn't really get too much training down at NXT because she was a manager, and she didn't get a lot of training when she got called up to WWE because she was a manager. But I feel like, once you start getting into wrestling, like, you could wrestle. If her desire was to wrestle, the whole time, she could have been training, for all this time, but she still kind of wrestles like she's still slightly new to the company. But she has gotten better. There's potential there. Um, but the ending with the type of pin, I don't know. It's whatever. It's not. And the other thing too with this whole situation with Lana, like, the win would have been a lot more meaningful if she had immediately won and then immediately got her ass out of the ring, versus winning and then she got beat down to the point that she can't even fight this Sunday, and which is a shame for her because it loses an opportunity for her, but if this is all for a return of a certain someone who hasn't been seen wrestling during the whole pandemic, what was the point of this whole underdog story for Lana? They could have just simply just kept putting her through the tables and then have her, do this surprise pin, for once, and then they beat her down like they did, instead of doing this whole underdog, type of, finally she worked hard to get this win and then she immediately gets beat down and gets attacked and now she can't wrestle anymore. We also had Dana Brooke versus Shayna Baszler. I like Shayna Baszler. My has, the time has changed. We went from at WrestleMania 36 of people thinking that she was actually going to take the title off of Becky Lynch to her having fights with Dana Brooke. Not anything bad on Dana Brooke, but it's just where she was as far as the title picture and where she stood. How dominant she was. Even though, like, they really shouldn't have did that vampire crap that they had her do. But the fact that she was, very dominant with WWE, it's kind of like, it's very interesting that she is, not as dominant as she was, like, even in NXT. But the interesting thing, and I read this argument on Twitter, and the interesting thing is how people are saying how much WWE isn't up to par with AEW and how NXT is better and things like that. And someone pointed out, like, most of the roster are people who came from NXT, which is true. And I guess their point is that it's more the wrestlers, but my opinion is that it's more of the creative. It's more of the vision of the main roster versus NXT. But it kind of makes you think, like, is it the wrestlers, like, of how good Keith Lee was in NXT, and now he, like I had said last week, how Vince has now had people go down to NXT, to the Performance Center, to get training. It was actually Keith Lee who was one of those people. And I was a bit surprised because I'm like, he's so good in NXT. Like, it kind of baffles me. But then I realized, like, maybe it's his style of wrestling that Vince McMahon doesn't like. But I'll get into that in a little bit. The biggest thing tonight, for Monday Night Raw, was AJ Styles versus Sheamus. AJ Styles showing that he definitely is the face who should run the place. Definitely using The Miz and John Morrison on his side to try to help him win the title. Sheamus, of course, is the friend of Drew McIntyre. There was a championship ascension ceremony that was held with AJ Styles and McIntyre to close the show. AJ Styles, talking shit, sitting there saying how long it took for Drew McIntyre to become champion, and AJ Styles, saying, the level that he is, and that he is going to take the title away from Drew McIntyre. And Drew McIntyre, kudos to him. He is the COVID champion. He has definitely carried Raw as best as he could without the audience. And I used to wonder if the audience kind of exposed him. And I feel this way with Keith Lee as well. If it's the audience that put him over more than it is, him actually in the ring. But I feel like that's kind of how it is with a lot of people. A lot of people missing having the pop of the fans, and being able to interact with the fans as well. So going into TLC this weekend, of course, TLC is always one of the throwaway pay-per-views because we are about to go into the Royal Rumble and the start of the WrestleMania season. And so a lot of these matches are either throwaway feuds or a feud to set up the real feud of the WrestleMania season. So going into these predictions, the first match is for the Raw Tag Team Champions, The New Day versus the Hurt Business, Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander. I am actually going to go with the Hurt Business on this one. I think that it's about time for them to get a championship to show a little bit more dominance. They have it with they have it with Bobby Lashley, but I don't know, it just feels like I like Bobby Lashley, but I feel like something is off. And I feel that with the Hurt Business having the titles, and then MVP being able to be, that veteran manager to kind of help them out as well, I think it'll be good. And I think this will also continue the storyline between them and the New Day as well. And then we get the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Asuka and To Be Determined, because Lana is injured. And like I had said before, this is obviously a setup for a return, or possibly not even a surprise. It could come out that it's going to be Mandy Rose or Dana Brooke, or there are rumors that Eva Marie is training again, even though I don't think it would be her. But the biggest name, of course, is the one and only, the Mrs. Steal Your Championship, Charlotte Flair. And Charlotte Flair is good at what she does, but I feel like she is overbooked. She is the female version of Roman Reigns. There was someone out there who said that out of the four horsewomen, she is the one who is liked the least. And that is true. Everyone loves Becky Lynch. Everyone loves the heel Sasha Banks. People even loved when it was heel Bayley. And face Bayley, especially in NXT, oh, don't. They had. I love the chant that they had from the internationals when they did the song like, "Hey, Bayley, I want to know, would you be my girl?" I know I said it like off key and so wrong, but those were the words. And then we have Charlotte Flair, who has, 16 championships? Like, she's obviously going to beat her dad. Probably going to be the first one to beat her dad as far as championships. And so I think it's going to, if it's Charlotte returning, of course, they're going to, Asuka and her are going to take the titles off of Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. And then Charlotte's going to go after Asuka's championship on top of that. And that's probably going to be the WrestleMania feud. There is a rumor that a lot of the feuds for WrestleMania aren't really locked in yet, which is a bit surprising because since, WrestleMania feuds are the biggest thing. But I think they're not locked in because of the pandemic. WrestleMania 37 is supposed to take place in LA. And who knows if they'll be able to. We have to see what's going to happen for March if, the vaccine's going to be out enough, if, people are willing to take the vaccine, if there are going to be any restrictions in California or anything like that. So, but I think it's going to be Charlotte Flair who returns, and it's going to be Charlotte Flair who's going to take the title. After that, for the SmackDown Women's Championship, we got Sasha Banks versus Carmella. Of course, I'm going to take Sasha Banks. I don't think really Carmella has a chance. I feel as though it's too early for Carmella to go after the championship. Because once you get shot up to the championship and then you lose, you kind of go down from there. So I would have felt better if, I think a better storyline for her was if she came back and attacked Mandy Rose. And then we would have had her versus Mandy Rose. Kind of to get a build-up of the character before she gets into the title shot. Because now it's more concentration on Sasha Banks and her being able to retain her title versus us wondering, more intrigued about Carmella. I think that would have worked out a lot better. Next up, we get The Fiend, Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton. I'm going to go with The Fiend on this one. Randy Orton showing the little trick that he had for Bray Wyatt of him locking into a box and setting it on fire with attempted murder and having a smile on his face, only for The Fiend to pop out and show more of his dominance. I think The Fiend is going to win here. I really don't see a reason why The Fiend would lose. Even though it kind of set Randy Orton a bit on a losing streak, but I think Randy Orton definitely can handle a losing streak better than The Fiend. After that, we have the Universal Championship match, Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens in a tables, ladders, and chairs match. I'm going to go with our tribal chief on this one. He's going to continue his dominance until who knows who at WrestleMania. I hope it's not Goldberg, but I definitely see Roman Reigns winning this championship. Jey Uso, I think he's going to try to fuck things up, trying to, be proactive and, attack Kevin Owens, and I think he's going to fuck it up, and then Roman Reigns is going to tell him to walk his ass home or something like that. But I think Roman Reigns is still going to retain the championship. And then finally, for the WWE Championship, is Drew McIntyre versus AJ Styles, tables, ladders, and chairs match. And this match is going to be hard to call because I like Drew and I like AJ Styles. And it's going to be hard to tell. It's going to be hard to predict of which way this match is going to go. But I'm going to go with AJ Styles. Straight bias, I know. But I feel, I don't know. Because then you have The Miz and you have Morrison. And it could be that they try something and screw up AJ Styles in the match as well. The craziest thing is if AJ Styles win and then the Miz cashes in. I feel that the Miz will not cash in on Sunday. I think he's going to continue to string it in the air. But I am happy that the briefcase is being used more in these few weeks than Otis did for half the year. Instead of turning it into a damn lunchbox and actually carrying it around instead of threatening to use it to cash in so you can get a guaranteed championship down there. I'm going to go with AJ Styles in this one. So going into the previews for AEW NXT, definitely a good setup for both shows. First off, we got Omega versus Joey Janela. And I think the explanation for it is because Joey Janela was injured during the tournament, so he gets a title shot. Okay. We know who's going to win this. It's all a matter of how much of an asshole that Omega is going to show during this match. How many sweeper girls are we going to get in this entrance? What fact is Justin Roberts going to say during Omega's entrance as well? And then we get the 7-on-7 match. The Inner Circle versus Best Friends, Top Flight, Varsity Blondes, and Brandon Cutler. Which is like, good gosh. 7-on-7, that's a lot. But AEW loves their tag teams. They love factions. The more people in the ring, the better for them. So I think this may be handled well. But 7-on-7, that's going to be a lot of people on a 2-hour weekly show. Especially if you want all 14 people to kind of get a chance to shine. I think Inner Circle, of course, is going to take this one because it is kind of a bunch of people randomly put together on the other side. And then we get Cody versus Angelico. I love the hybrid. Of course, we're going to go with Cody on this one. It's a matter of if he's going to do his short entrance for AEW Dynamite or if he's going to go full Triple H on us. I feel like we may get him calling out Sting or something like that. I don't know. But I believe Sting is going to show up as well. And then we get Hangman Page and John Silver and Alex Reynolds from the Dark Order versus Matt Hardy and Private Party. I really like Private Party. I'm not quite sure why they are hanging out with Matt Hardy these past couple of weeks, but I like Private Party. I wish that they had a title shot. Definitely a feud against the Young Bucks, but, they are now kind of feuding more with the Acclaimed, I think their name is, versus, actually creating a feud. On to NXT side, we have Karrion Kross, who is back in action. We have Kyle O'Reilly versus Pete Dunne. The winner of this match will challenge the Prince Finn Balor at NXT New Year's Evil on January 6th. I'm rooting for Kyle O'Reilly. I like Kyle. I definitely feel like, oh my gosh, if he wins that championship, the entrance that he will have playing the hell out of that championship like a guitar, very similar to Hulk Hogan, definitely be cool. But I think that either way, either opponent, Finn Balor is going to win because the true setup is for Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross or for the Demon versus Karrion Kross. Either way, I will be fine. We're also getting Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley. A lot of, heartbreakers in that ring. Kushida, and then we have Kushida and Leon Ruff versus Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. And I was laughing up with Leon Ruff. Kushida mentioned that he is going to join Kushida to go against Gargano and Austin Theory. And there was this funny little part where Leon Ruff was staring at him, and then he went to put his fist out for the fist bump, and Kushida kind of like reluctantly fist bumped him. And I kind of made the joke of, when you're teamed up with the lackey in the class or something, because Kushida kind of realized like, oh snap, I'm teaming up with this guy. But I think it's going to be a good show on both sides. Little bit worrisome about that 7-on-7 match. But I think that Omega Janela match, Janela can take some damn hits. So I think Omega is definitely going to be hard hitting in that match. Of course, Karrion Kross back in action, especially after him having to give up the championship. Can't wait to see that. Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley, and then O'Reilly versus Pete Dunne. So it's all a matter of who will get my attention more on Wednesday night. But that's it for the Wrestlebread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to Julian Rob Bates from the Wrestling Court podcast on AlternativeMinds.com. Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show. Chris and We Talk Next podcast, which is featured on the Keita and Jay Show. Nando and Larry from Half K Podcast. And Devin Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling. And my boys over at Powerbomb Jitsu. So coming up next week, I'll be giving my recap of TLC. I will also be going over the fallout on Raw and a recap of what happens on AEW Dynamite and NXT. And I mentioned that there will be a little awards that I'm going to be doing called the Wrestlebread Awards. Be on the lookout for Twitter. I will be putting out a survey for you to pick who you think is the best wrestler, best match, best entrance, best female wrestler, best tag team / faction, wrestler who should win the championship in 2021, worst feuds, things like that. So I will be dropping the survey tomorrow, Wednesday, during AEW Dynamite / NXT. But if you missed the link, you can check it out on Twitter, either on my Twitter, which is at Jaydee Talks, or on the podcast Twitter page as well. It's going to be pinned at the top. If you fill out the form, I will be attaching a giveaway for that as well. It's going to be a $25 gift card of your choice between either AEW or WWE, because that's what the survey is going to be on. It's going to be on AEW, NXT, and WWE. Sorry, Impact. I haven't really watched enough all year to kind of like gather notes of, what happened during the year versus NXT and AEW. So answer the survey. You'll be entered into a drawing for a $25 gift card. I will announce the winner during the special episode of the podcast, which will be, and it's going to be after Christmas. So if you're trying to get a shirt in time for Christmas, sorry, it's not happening. It's going to be an end of the year show, a recap with the awards and everything like that. So be on the lookout for it. You can follow me on Twitter at Jaydee Talks, JAYDEE Talks. You can follow the podcast at Wrestlebread on Twitter. You can also find the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and wherever you listen to the podcast after it's recorded, which is on Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play as well. And you can find me live every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and I make that promise. It is Tuesday at 9 o'clock on Mixlr. I normally tweet out the link 30 minutes beforehand, but you can always find it on the Twitter profiles as well. Leave a review. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predictions for TLC this Sunday. Are you excited? Are you not excited? And do you think that Miss Charlotte Flair is definitely coming back? I think she is. I think she's just going to turn 2021 into her little year. And it's all a matter of when she's taking the title, not if. So Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, guys, peace.